And that biggest fear for me was is the fear of like 50 years later, 60 years later, looking back on my life and saying, what if? Meaning, if I didn't move to New York City, would I be saying to myself, what if I had moved to New York City? Right then is when I knew I would always have that one big regret if I didn't do it then. Hey there, it's Suzanne Oshima, life coach for women in midlife and your fellow sister on a mission to empower and inspire you through the twists and turns of midlife. I'm here to help you transform it into your best life with the Life is Now, Do It While You Can podcast. We only get one life, so let's make it count, and I'm super excited to dive into this new journey together. Woohoo! Guess what? Last month, I had a big milestone birthday. I just turned 60 last month. I know, crazy. I still can't believe I turned 60. Honestly, I still feel like I'm in my 40s, and I act like I'm 12 half the time, but that's beside the point. Anyways, my sister, for my 60th birthday, she gave me, honestly, I think the best birthday gift I've ever gotten in my entire life. And it was so nice. And what my sister did was she compiled a book of pictures from the time I was little until recently of all of my friends who wrote the nicest things in this book of memories, and it included pictures, like I said, from the time I was really young until recently in my 50s. And it was just so nice, and it made me want to cry to go back through all of those amazing memories with different friends. And it got me thinking about different birthdays that I've had over the years. And the birthday that really sticks out to me was the birthday that when I turned 31. And you're probably going, why? Why 31? What's so special about turning 31? And the truth is, there's nothing special about that birthday. Except for me, that was the only birthday that I've ever freaked out about turning a certain age. And I know you're probably wondering, like, why 31? I know, because most people freak out when they turn like milestone birthdays, 40, 50, 60, or beyond. And for me, that's never been the case. I've never freaked out at any of those big milestone birthdays. But I'm not normal. I freaked out on the only birthday of 31, and you're probably wondering, why would you freak out when you turn 31? Well, let me share with you what happened when I turned 31. So at the time, you may or may not know, I'm originally from San Francisco. I grew up, I was born and raised there. The only time I didn't live there in my 20s is when I went to college in Southern California at Cal State Long Beach. And then after college, I moved back to San Francisco and I started working there in a job that I'll tell you about in a second. But anyways, the reason why I freaked out was I was living in San Francisco and I was working at a job that, quite honestly, it wasn't anything special. It was just a 9-to-5 job. I mean, it was a good job, but it wasn't like, oh my God, this is my dream job. And I was doing event marketing for this company, and I would commute an hour to work and an hour home. And it was really just a 9-to-5 job that paid well, but to be honest, I wasn't challenged. And I was kind of bored. I was working in a cubicle, and half the time I remember I would just sit there staring at a wall going, oh my God, is it 5 p.m. yet? Have you ever felt like that? Well, it occurred to me when I turned 31, I definitely wasn't really living my best life, right? And that's exactly why I freaked out. And to be honest, I was disappointed in myself because I had never lived out my dream. And my dream from the time that I was little was that I always knew I wanted to live in New York City. From the time that my parents brought me there for the first time on a family vacation in the 8th grade, I knew I fell in love with New York City. And I knew at some point I was going to live in New York City, right? And it's funny because in looking back, now that I'm 60 and I look back to when I was 31, but we don't know what we don't know. But when I turned 31, I remember feeling like, well, Suzanne, your life is set. Meaning I was living in San Francisco and I thought that's where I would live out the rest of my life. That's really how I felt. I felt like, you work here, you've got this set career here, and this is how it is. And I know, like I said, we don't know what we don't know. But back then I really thought this is where I'm going to live out the rest of my life. I know that's crazy, right? So anyways, I really thought at that point in my life at 31 that it was too late for me to move to New York City. I really felt like I should have done it in my 20s after I graduated from college. And I was kicking myself like, why didn't you move to New York in your 20s? Now you're 31 and it's too late. And so after beating myself up and feeling sorry for myself, after I had my stupid little pity party, that's when I looked at my life and I asked myself, what's really holding you back from moving to New York City? And I pointed out to myself, you don't have a boyfriend or husband. You don't have children. You don't even have a job that you love. It's just a job. And that's when I woke up. And I realized that nothing, absolutely nothing, was really stopping me from moving to New York City in my 30s. Nothing that is but fear and doubt. And those are big buts, right? Fear and doubt. Because they're big, because I didn't have a job lined up. I didn't have a place to live. And the truth is, I only really knew one person that was a good friend, and she didn't even live in New York City. She lived in New Jersey. And not gonna lie, I was actually really scared to move 3,000 miles away from home. Even though, like I said, I knew I always wanted to live in New York City. But when it comes down to it, it's like, oh God, that's so far away. And I was afraid. I'm going to be totally vulnerable and honest with you. I was afraid. I was afraid that what if it doesn't work out? What if I don't find a job? What if I can't find a place to live? And what if I don't meet any new friends? And the big one for me was, what if I fail? Like, I'm so afraid of failure. And those are big what ifs, right? And they're valid. I mean, they're valid fears of what if. But then I really thought about it. And I knew deep down inside that this would always be one of my biggest regrets in life if I never moved to New York City. And I knew that this would be the kind of regret, that I would have on my deathbed if I never did it. I would always look back and go, God, I wish I moved to New York City. And I know that sounds morbid, but it's true. I knew this would be one of those regrets on my deathbed one day. Not anytime soon, but when it came, I knew I would have that big regret. So instead of thinking about all of my big fears and doubts, I decided to focus on something different, which was I thought about my biggest fear, like the ultimate biggest fear, right? And that biggest fear for me was this, is the fear of like 50 years later, 60 years later, looking back on my life and saying, what if? Meaning, if I didn't move to New York City, would I be saying to myself, what if I had moved to New York City, right then is when I knew I would always have that one big regret if I didn't do it then. So this is what I did, is I turned the tables on myself and I said to myself, what if it doesn't work out? What if I don't find a job? What if I can't find an affordable place to live? What if I don't meet any new friends? And what if I completely fail? And I remember saying to myself loud and clear, so what? I'm going to say that again. So what? That's what I said to myself. No big deal. You just move back to SF. And at least I would know that I tried it and it didn't work out, but I would never have that regret of what if I had moved to New York City. So at 32, because it took some planning after I turned 31 to pack things up, start looking for a job in New York City. So I moved to New York City at 32. Without a job, without a place to live. And I only knew, like I said, one person, and she lived in New Jersey. She didn't even live in New York City. And you're probably wondering, oh, that's a fairy tale ending. Was it a fairy tale ending? No. Because I'm going to be honest with you. When I got to New York City, not going to lie, I had a tough time. And I shed many tears. Because if you know anything about New York City, it's a tough city to live in. And I even thought to myself a couple of times, maybe I'm not cut out for New York City. I mean, I'm tough. But I started to doubt myself and think, I don't know if I'm tough enough. And if you know that song by Frank Sinatra, New York, New York, you know how he sings, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. Well, it's true. But a few months later, I found the job. I got a job at an ad agency, and then I found an apartment. And I will tell you, if you know anything about New York City, it was actually easier to find the job than the apartment. And when I got the new job, I made a lot of new friends. And honestly, it's friends that I'm still friends with today. And the happy ending is this, is that I ended up living in New York City for 22 years. And to be honest, it was the greatest years of my life. I have so many great memories of living in New York City. And I'm so glad I followed my dream and conquered my fears and doubts, and I moved there, because if I didn't, I'll be honest, my 60th birthday would have been filled with the regret of having never moved to New York City. So I want to share with you the biggest thing I learned from that experience is to live life with no regrets. I'm going to say it again. Live life with no regrets. Because like I said, I know this sounds morbid, but this is honestly how I felt at the time and how I still feel today, is I never want to get to my deathbed and look back on my life and wish I had done something. I want to know at least I tried, and if I failed, that's okay. But at least I know that I tried. And I'll never look back and go, oh, look what could have been. I'll know I tried, and it's okay, it didn't work out. So my question for you is, what's the one thing that's been on your mind for a long time that you've been wanting to do forever, but fear or doubt is really holding you back? And maybe you've been thinking, well, it's too late for me. I had this dream a long time ago. Maybe you're thinking it's too late for you. And the truth is, it's never too late. It's only too late if you never try? And I invite you to take this as your sign to take it off the back burner and just do it. Because remember, you never want to have regrets in life. You don't want to, and I don't want to. And I'll leave you with this one last quote by Mark Twain, because it's so apropos. The quote by Mark Twain is, 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than by the ones you did do. So think about that for a second. And now it's time for you to take the leap of faith. And just remember, you've got this. If you're ready to transform midlife into your best life, but you've been feeling like you're all alone on this journey, I can help you make new connections with like-minded women and create lasting friendships. So, if you're ready to meet new friends who are ready and excited to join you on this midlife journey, head on over to SuzanneOshima.com and grab my free ebook, Meet New Friends and Spark Meaningful Connections. I know all too well how hard it can be to meet new friends in midlife. In my free ebook, I'll share with you how to unlock the easy, fun ways to connect with like-minded women who are just like you and are looking to make new friends too. Plus, by signing up, you'll be the first to know about new episodes on my podcast, and you'll get access to exclusive content that will empower and inspire you on your midlife journey today and in the future.